All right, good afternoon, Fort Collins. You are listening to 90.5 KCSU FM, and this is Science CSU, the show where we bring you the latest and greatest in student and faculty research here at CSU. I'm Rachel Mason. Tyler Stepp couldn't make it in today, but we are actually sitting in studio with Ellie Mock. She is a undergraduate student here at CSU, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about coyotes and human-wildlife conflict in urban areas today. So thanks for coming in, Ellie.
Oh yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
So just to start off, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you're studying here at CSU?
Okay, yeah. So I'm originally from Austin, Texas, and I just decided I couldn't take the heat, so I came up here for undergrad, and I'm studying wildlife biology here at CSU.
Very cool. And what got you interested in wildlife biology?
I have always loved animals. I just from the get-go, I knew whatever I was gonna do was gonna involve animals, and for a while I bounced around like, oh, I want to be the crocodile hunter, I want to be a vet, and finally I did a camp actually here at CSU, and I realized what I wanted to do was wildlife biology, because being out there in the field and just experiencing nature and everything along with wildlife was really what I wanted to do.
And how did you get involved in your current research?
Right, so I met Stuart, who is my kind of research mentor / boss, through the department head, Ken Wilson. He runs the Department for Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology, and I just sent him an email saying that I was a really motivated student ready to just get going in research and start doing stuff with that. And he connected me with Stuart, who was looking for someone to help him out with his current research, and we met, we liked each other a whole lot, and we just decided that I would be on the team for coyote research down in Denver.
And what does this coyote research entail exactly?
So it's a very large project through the USDA, and under the USDA, the National Wildlife Research Center. We're trying to mitigate coyote conflict down in Denver because we're getting cats eaten by coyotes, dogs attacked, even small children sometimes are attacked. And so the scope of this research goes all the way from population modeling to behavior analysis, hazing programs to try and intimidate the coyotes. But my little sector of the research is diet analysis, which involves going through all the scat.
Okay, and what would a diet analysis tell you exactly in the grand scheme of things? What's actually going on?
So we're trying to compare the diet of coyotes that are living in high housing density areas versus low housing density areas, and seeing if those coyotes in high housing density areas are maybe relying on human foods more than the low housing density coyotes. So maybe these high housing density coyotes are eating trash or non-native fruits that people have grown in their yards, or which also includes maybe cat or dog remains in the feces. So that's pretty much what we're trying to figure out. And maybe we've also noticed that there's an increased trend in conflict in Denver with coyotes in the winter. So we're trying to see if maybe this is a food shortage, like maybe the coyotes are going to eat more trash in winter months than, say, the summer months. That could indicate a food shortage.
Interesting. Is there more direct human-coyote conflict in the wintertime? Because it seems like a lot more people would be out during the summertime and there'd be a lot more conflict there. But
yeah, that's what's interesting. We've noticed pretty much all conflict increased in the winter. And honestly, other studies have noticed increased conflicts in the summer. And
really?
I think it probably just depends on the region, because summer would indicate maybe, like, yes, people are out more, so that has something to do with it. Maybe they're just seeing the coyotes more.
Right.
At the same time, it could also just be that's when they're rearing their pups, and so the coyotes might be more territorial.
Oh, okay.
But for whatever reason, we're seeing higher conflict in the winter here in Denver. So trying to figure out if it's food related.
You mentioned you're working with Stuart, and he's with the USDA.
Mm-hmm.
So when you kind of got on with this initially, this project, did you have to kind of develop your plan of attack, how you were going to go out there and actually study and analyze the diet of these coyotes, or were the protocols and procedures just kind of given to you?
I did actually have to come up with pretty much all my procedures, and it wasn't like a formal research proposal, since I am just undergrad, but I did have to go through and research scat collection methods as well as analysis methods, because Stuart actually doesn't know too much about diet analysis himself. He knows the basics, but I had to actually find some other people. Actually, her name is Rachel Mason. She is kind of like, she's an undergrad too, but she's like the expert on scat here at CSU. She knows her stuff. And so I talked to her. She showed me how to analyze scat, how to wash it, and look for remains, and everything. And I had to go through a bunch of books and all that, and kind of formulate my own path that would be most appropriate for collecting in Denver.
Okay. And could you kind of walk us through like what you actually do when you go out there and collect, or any preparation that you have to do, and also just kind of how you're analyzing all of
Sure. Yeah. So basically we have 12 sites. 6 are high housing density, 6 are low housing density. And I didn't calculate the high housing density versus low housing density. One of Stuart's co-workers, Sharon Pessel, she went in and did that with GIS, because I didn't have too much knowledge of that yet. So she found the sites, and once we were there, we mapped them out, and we decided if these were actually going to be feasibly good sites, because some of the sites we checked out didn't have any scat along them. I guess for whatever reason the coyotes just aren't pooping there. They're pretty much everywhere, but they just have certain places that they like to defecate. But once we had those sites, basically we cleared them initially and didn't collect. We just wanted to clear all old scat so we weren't getting any biased data. Then once a month we would go in and collect all the scat along a certain trail, which was this site. And we had to wear gloves, and we put the scat in a paper bag. Each one we had labeled it, of which number it was, and the date, the site number, and then we just put them all in a bag and took them up here to CSU for analysis. And basically the analysis part is pretty complicated. It takes a lot of time and energy. Basically you dry the scat and you weigh it, and then you let it soak in a soap bath, and then you dry it again, and then you don't dry it. No, you let it soak in the soap bath, and then you wash it through a strainer so that all of the hair and the bones, you can see that better. And then as far as hair goes, we actually mix it with a paint stirrer and let it all homogenize so that we can sample the hair rather than having to look at every single hair under the microscope. And actually, one of the big differences we're doing for this scat analysis is we're not going through every single little scat. We're putting all the scats we collect for that one site together and washing them together so that it's less time consuming. And we're actually not reducing our statistical power, because our power is all in not how many scats we collect, but how many sites. And
okay.
And once we have all that washed and dried, which takes a while, we'll basically look at all the hairs under a microscope. We can look at the hair medulla to see what kind of animal that was eaten, as well as the bones. We can look at the teeth structure and everything, and seeds. Coyotes eat a lot of fruit too, so I'll have to get a seed key and determine what kind of fruits are in there. But yeah, it's a long process.
Yeah.
I'll get there.
No, that's very interesting. I guess I don't think that most people know that coyotes eat seeds.
Yeah, they'll eat fruits and trash and all kinds of stuff. They're technically considered omnivores and not carnivores, even though most people see them as just
carnivores. So they're more generalist then.
They are, and that's why they're doing so well. Is because they'll eat anything, they can live almost anywhere, and they're just doing real well.
So what about like things like bone fragments? How do you think that you guys are gonna analyze and see?
So not
what kind
every
of animal?
Piece of bone can really be used to identify things. You can kind of tell on size, maybe this was a rodent, but you can't go down to species. The teeth, however, are much more indicative of what kind of animal that was. And as far as larger animals like cats or dogs, obviously the coyotes aren't really eating whole bones or teeth
Right.
of these animals, but I have seen cat claws. So that's something that
Interesting. Have you found any like dog claws in there yet?
No dog claws. No, I have seen a half-eaten dog before though out when I was looking for coyote pups, trying to count them, and pup turned out to be carrying a piece of dog. So,
Oh no.
yeah, I haven't found any in the scat yet, but there might be hair, and I haven't gone through any hair yet.
Right.
But, definitely might be there.
So have you seen many of these coyotes in the wild, like kind of in person, or?
I have, yeah. They're surprisingly almost everywhere. You don't see them too much out in the day, but we do have them radio collared. And so over the summer, it was part of my job to use radio telemetry to find these coyotes. And usually they're just bunkered down right next to someone's house. There are a lot of drainage ditches. They'll just get in a little bush there. But for the most part, they seem pretty scared of us.
Really?
I actually came. I guess she was sleeping, this coyote, because I came up to her on a bend of a river, and the signal was super close, and I had gotten up to the edge of the river, and I assumed that she must be right across the way, and I started turning around, and then I hear this splash. I was like 1 foot away from this coyote, and she just jumped right in the river. She was like, I don't want to be here.
Oh my goodness.
Here. Yeah. But a lot of people don't even know they're there. So most of them, I would say, are actually not a problem to humans. It's just a few that they get brave and they start causing.
Okay. So when you say brave, are these reports mainly just coyotes coming out, like when people are walking their dogs on the trail, or?
Mm-hmm. Most of these don't actually end in attacks. These conflict reports, a lot of them are just maybe a coyote is following someone, but they don't end up actually attacking. It's still considered aggressive behavior because they're kind of like checking you out. You know, it's like, oh, maybe they're thinking about attacking you. Most of them don't actually end up doing it. But yeah, one of the biggest problems, like you said, is dogs. Is if those dogs are off leash, often coyotes will attack those dogs because, you know, if they have pups they're trying to defend, or maybe even just their territory. They see dogs as an obvious threat, and if they're not on leash, they're a much easier target because they're further.
Right. And I feel like dogs can get territorial as well.
They can, yeah. My dog, she's very territorial. So anyone who gets close, she'll just
Kind of going a little off. What do you expect to find in this study? I mean, because obviously you've heard all of these reports and everything, and so you know that there is some conflict there, but how big of a conflict do you think it is? I know that you don't have too many results yet with your study. Is this a very wide problem? Is it just kind of isolated to these high conflict areas?
We've noticed that conflict areas they're not just one place. They kind of move around. And so we were originally gonna compare high conflict areas to low conflict areas, but we realized they're just always moving around. So it's not necessarily like one specific pack that's causing issues. So what I'm expecting though is that I'm expecting these coyotes in these high housing density areas. I'm expecting to see more trash, more cat remains, because you know they're so close to humans, it's almost impossible to not utilize them.
Right.
And especially, I mean, cats are such an easy target for them. If people are letting their cats out on their own and it's dark at night,
they just become part of the food chain.
Yep, exactly. And what's interesting actually is cats, feral cats at least, you know, it's really sad when someone loses a pet. I totally don't think that should be stopped, but feral cats are definitely actually a problem for biodiversity. They eat all kinds of songbirds and lizards. So honestly, if they're eating feral cats, which I can't tell from my research, but I'm okay with them knocking down the feral cat population.
Right. So how do you define high conflict versus low conflict area? That seems.
So we took a number. I think it was I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but I think it was like maybe 5,000 houses per square mile or something, like maybe not that high, but it was like a certain amount of area with a number of houses, and kind of did a zonal thing across Denver. It's like if they were in this high housing density category, then we could pick sites from there. There was like a medium category that we didn't pick from, so there's kind of like a buffer. So it's not like just arbitrary categories.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And then the lower, usually when we're out in the lower, you don't see many houses nearby. There's a lot of natural space. Sometimes you can't even see any houses nearby.
As far as like management and trying to solve this conflict, what do you think that wildlife officials could do to kind of get everyone on board with, not having these coyotes eating trash and not being in contact with humans in such a way that, would be bad for them?
Right, yeah, and I think if my results for the food analysis show that they are eating enough trash and cats and possibly dogs, I think wildlife officials will probably get out there and say that it'd be a good idea for people to store their trash better. Maybe not leave it out at night, only bring it out for the day of trash pickup. Obviously, keeping your cat indoors is probably a good idea, especially like just awareness, raising awareness that you might lose your pet if you don't watch him, because basically a lot of these cities are not interested in using lethal methods for these coyotes, and that's
really
actually yeah, some of them are. I think Aurora has used lethal methods, but a lot of them they don't want guns being fired off. They don't want poison's a huge issue because dogs will eat the poison too.
Right.
And so basically these coyotes aren't afraid of us anymore, and when they're not afraid of us, they get bold. They'll even attack small children. So this isn't part of my research, but part of what Stuart wants to do is collect several citizen scientists across Denver and teach them how to, it's called a hazing program, where they'll basically be intimidating the coyote and keeping them afraid of us. We're not, hazing programs like this haven't been widely used, so we're not sure of their effectiveness, but if people aren't willing to use lethal methods, we need to be doing something to be scaring these coyotes off. And I definitely, if we can avoid using lethal methods, I'm for it, because it's always sad when you have to kill an animal, because it's just
right, it just wants to survive.
So hopefully this hazing program works. It hasn't really taken off the ground yet, but we'll be gathering volunteers and teaching them how to intimidate those coyotes. Hopefully it works.
So do you know at all what they're going to do to try to intimidate those coyotes in that program yet?
Right. So I think the idea is if they see a coyote, to approach it. Obviously, we don't want small children doing this, because I don't think it would be as effective, but yelling, throwing things, nothing like a large rock or something that could actually harm the coyote, but throwing rocks, yelling, getting yourself really big and stretching out your arms. All those things will pretty effectively scare a coyote away. They're not very large animals. A lot of people think they're huge and vicious, but they're really only, like, the biggest males are about 30 pounds. So they're really not that large. They're kind of fluffy, so they look a little bigger than they actually weigh. Yeah, the biggest thing is just looking scary.
Okay. And why Denver? Why not Fort Collins?
Well, we actually don't have too much of a coyote problem here in Fort Collins. I don't really even hear them howling or anything here in Fort Collins. Denver is such a sprawling, large city that, it keeps expanding. I think it's starting to encroach on coyote territory, and they've also just had more time to adapt to city life there. In addition, a lot of large cities have been having increasing issues with coyotes. Like Chicago's been having, larger cities in Texas have been having problems. Some people think it's related to the drought we've had for the past few years. Could also just be urban expansion. There aren't any solid research on this, so it's all just theory. But these big cities, coyotes are adapting to them, and they're attracting.
So there are coyotes in Chicago.
Yeah, there are. Actually, one of the research papers I used to consult did a similar diet analysis on their coyotes there.
Wow. So what is their range then? I mean, where are there places where they don't live, I guess?
Right. So I don't know this too specifically about Chicago, but here in Denver, they're not in the big city areas. They're usually out in the more suburban. My research here in Denver encompasses all like the greater metro area.
Okay.
And it's usually those small suburbs just outside of the main city of Denver where this is a problem, because people like green space and more open spaces where they can hike and get out into a little bit of nature. These also suburban areas just tend to have little parks or just bigger yards too, which coyotes don't need a whole lot, but if they're even just like a little green space or park, they can live in there, but they don't go into the main city too much.
Okay. What do you really hope to gain from this knowledge that you acquire with all this research? What do you hope to do with it, or what do you hope the result will be from it?
Well, I'm hoping that maybe we don't get what we expect, but I'm hoping we get some kind of trend in my research. It is possible that there turns out there's no difference between high housing density coyote diet versus low housing density coyotes. So I'm definitely hoping for a difference there. And if pattern of maybe more cat and trash in the winter lines up with the conflict in winter, that could maybe help us solve this problem of why we have more conflict in the winter, and hopefully reduce that. And also just, you can even understand coyote behavior from this kind of diet analysis. So even if it doesn't line up with any kind of conflict, we can kind of see, well, they are eating trash, or that they are eating cats. Because another thing is, we know they're attacking cats and dogs. We don't know if they're eating them.
Okay.
I mean, we've had small pieces of evidence of what we've observed in the field, but, that's not hard science. So that's another thing, is like if they are actually eating these cats and dogs, and if they're eating them, that's indicative that they're short on food, and that's what
right,
a target for food, versus if they're just attacking. I think they're eating cats as a food source and attacking dogs mostly as a territorial, but we'll just have to see.
Have you or the USDA that you know of, have they done any like camera work where they actually, like the remote sensing cameras or something where they capture?
We actually have done a lot of that. We don't have too many results yet because we've only just started picking out sites and setting up the cameras, but we've been actually taking video. This is a behavior analysis where we'll take a video maybe at one site. At each of the sites, we have some kind of attracting. It's this little. It smells good to them. Basically, it's this little pill that smells really good to the coyote and attracts, and like a bait. And so the coyote will come in, and we're going to record their reaction to this bait. And so basically, some of these bait sites will have flags around them, like colorful flags around them, and some of them won't. And we're going to see, like, are these coyotes reacting to these flags? In theory, they should be afraid of them. We've seen this in coyotes and other canines. So maybe we're trying to find the coyotes maybe in more human-populated areas aren't as afraid of these flags as coyotes further out in the rural areas.
Okay. So what do coyotes, as far as other organisms and not like plant material, what do they normally eat? I mean, they're generalists, but...
So, they eat a lot of mice. They eat rabbits, usually small prey, but they'll also eat deer fawns.
Okay.
Occasionally, they'll attack from livestock. I guess that's not considered typical because those cows aren't normally there. But so they'll eat a lot of mice, and they'll also eat a lot of, just natural berries. Like persimmon berries are a pretty popular diet source. And apparently grass. I've seen a lot of grass in coyote diet. I don't know if that's the same thing as dogs with a digestion aid, but they do eat.
Interesting. We're good. So is there anything else that you'd like to say about your research, or any take-home messages that you'd like our listeners to kind of remember?
Well, yeah. Basically, I think the public should, if you can, kind of stay plugged in on what these coyotes are doing. If there are conflicts in your area, maybe pay attention to that. Obviously, try to keep your dogs on leash, keep your cats inside. But at the same time, try to enjoy these coyotes. They're really cool animals, and if we can learn to live alongside them, they're really interesting to watch. And the people I've come across in the field, most of them really enjoy having the coyotes around. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, just keep a lookout on these interesting animals.
Closing question, but what is next for you
Oh,
after you're
so
done with this research and everything?
I hope to get it published. That's the end goal for this research project. And eventually, I'm going to take a few years off of school and get some field experience, but definitely take off and go to a master's program and maybe even PhD. But lots of
Very
traveling,
nice.
hopefully. I'd like to get
Of
out to
course.
Australia and Africa and all that, so should be good.
Very cool. What are some of your career goals? Do you just want to do research or?
I'm not entirely sure yet, which is one of the kind of soul searching things I'm going to do while
While you're off?
while I'm off of school. Yeah, I'm also really interested in education, and I don't know if this means educating small children on how awesome wildlife are, so that they have more respect for them when they grow up, or helping other countries, more disadvantaged countries, with their wildlife problems, because I know that's a pretty big issue. But basically, there's a lot of species going extinct these days, and I'd really like to help with that. That's the end goal. Wherever I end up, that's what I want to end up helping. So
That's a good goal.
thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the interview, and we will be back again next Sunday, same time, same place, 4 to 5. Again, this is Science CSU, and this is 90.5 FM KCSU. Thanks for listening.